Oh, those are major facts. I think that it might be even more important. You know that what James Harden can do, but the difference to me is that James Harden draws so much attention because of the fact that he's scoring near 40 points per game. And he's such a great passer that even when he's not scoring the ball like he wasn't last night in that game against the Clippers, he only finished with, I believe, 28 points in the game. And he was really struggling at halftime. I believe he may have had less than 10 or right around 10. I'm not exactly sure. I can't remember the exact number. But the point behind it was he was not shooting the ball. He was 1 of 5 in the first half. And what he was doing was drawing attention, allowing Russell Westbrook to get going and get heated up. And he was finding Clint Capella rolling to the basket. So he was creating open shots for the rest of his team. What Russell Westbrook, the problem he had early this season was because he was shooting the ball so poorly and he didn't look like himself. Teams weren't honoring what they've been honoring out of Russell Westbrook the last several years. And so I think if he continues the production that he's had in the last 6 games now, coming into last night, he was averaging 27 points per game. He put up 40 in the game. If he continues to do that and do it at a somewhat effective clip, like he still didn't shoot the ball particularly well, but he did it. He got to the line a lot, which I think is important for him. If he continues to do things like that, I just think it makes them so much more dangerous offensively than they already were. And that's a scary thought because they were already the second highest scoring team in the league. And now you're adding Russell Westbrook to what looks like his MVP type form.
We're here with Noah Eagle, the radio voice of the LA Clippers. Okay, last one for you on Facts to Relax. There is a new king in the NBA, and as Giannis said to himself, I think he pointed to his cranium and said he's got the king on his, the crown on his head. Is Giannis the new king of the NBA, Noah?
Listen, I've now seen him twice in person this year. The guy is unlike anybody I've ever seen before. He just is incredible, but I'm going to say relax for now. I need to see him in the postseason this year before I can crown him the king of the NBA. Last year he was shooting, I think, near 60% in the regular season, around 58%. And in that Toronto series, he shot around 44% because Kawhi Leonard and the Toronto Raptors team defense found the way to stop him, which was dare him to shoot the 3, dare him to shoot those long 2s, and he did. And he fell right into the trap, and his shooting percentage went way down. His effectiveness went down. Now we've seen him shoot the 3. He made 5 last night. The couple games against the Clippers this year, he was hitting the ones that they were giving him open. If he can continue to do that into the postseason, if he can continue to perform at the same level in the postseason, then the conversation starts to shift because I think he is the most dominant, most skilled player potentially in the NBA if that jump shot becomes consistent. And consistent can mean anywhere between 35 and 45% from 3. Even if it's like 36% from 3, that's a pretty average three-point shooter in the NBA. But you're adding it to somebody who is so impossible to stop once he gets in the lane that you're still going to have to dare him to shoot the 3, and now he's starting to make it. So I just think that he needs to prove it down the stretch in the postseason and try to get this Bucks team at minimum, in my eyes, to the NBA Finals before we even begin to talk about it.
And I would agree with that. And I think the positive to Giannis so far in this season has not only been his productivity, but is also attempting to shoot threes. Now, I think that's the biggest thing with Ben Simmons is like, dude, we're in an NBA now where threes are king. When is that going to start to develop? But hey, I mean, I think the guy's 2 for 2 this year, so I guess we got to give him some type of credit.
The other thing I will say about Giannis, though, Steven, think about and try to think about when's the last time that we've seen a superstar to this caliber this quickly that's as likable as Giannis Antetokounmpo.
Yeah.
Like, I just think that's what always drew me to him was the guys that he plays with seem to love him. I've talked to guys who have played with him in the past, and they said that his work ethic is basically disgusting. It is more than anybody they've ever been around. I've talked to Karam Butler before the season, who one of his final years in the NBA was with the Bucks, and it was when Giannis was just breaking in as a rookie. And he said he'd played with Kobe, he played with some of the best, Dirk, and he said this guy's work ethic trumped all of them. And that was what scared me. Like, okay, so he's going to develop all these things that were the weaknesses. I mean, he's only, 24, 25, I think he just turned. So he's got time, and he's already so ahead of the curve. So it's a scary thought, but he's not quite there yet. But I do think the likability is a huge factor for him that separates him from probably some other top-tier guys.
Agreed. All right, we're a couple months into the season here. You've got to take a look at a bunch of different teams. I know you haven't played every team, the Clippers being, but give me your top 3 that you've seen so far that you've just been really impressed with, a team that you can see winning the title here in June.
I mean, the Bucks are number one. I think head and shoulders. When the Clips went to Milwaukee, that was when I kind of took a step back and said, "Whoa, this team means business," and they gel really well together. I think they've played off of each other extraordinarily well this season, and it's shown in the record. And they're beating pretty much everybody in front of them, and they won 18 straight games. They shoot it well. They've got an inside presence. Brook Lopez, to me, has been one of the X factors of that team because his interior defense, if you look at the metrics of Brook Lopez protecting the rim, he's doing it at the highest clip of his career. And he's already been a pretty solid rim protector through his time in the NBA, but he's taking it to another level. And so now you've got Giannis, Brook Lopez, Middleton, Eric Bledsoe hounding guys on the exterior. Dante DiVincenzo has really taken a step forward in year 2. So I like Milwaukee a lot. And I listen, I'm biased, but I'm going to pick the Clippers just because.
No, that's not bias. That's facts.
I still think the Clippers are right there. I think this team is starting to really come together. And since Paul George has returned, let's put it this way. In the first 11 games without Paul George, the Clippers averaged about 110 points per game and won the majority of those games. They shot just about 32% from 3 and made 9 per game. Since George has returned to the lineups in the 19 games following, they have averaged 118 points per game, so it's an 8-point bump. They're shooting 38% from 3, and they're making 13 and a little over 13 per game, so more than 4 threes increase. And now they got Landry Shamet back in the mix, who is, I don't know, people know him, sure, but they don't know the extent that he can really help this team. The guy's a game breaker. That's how Doc Rivers describes him. He's a game breaker with his shooting ability. So last night, for example, George hit 6 threes. Shamet hits 4. You've already got 10 from 2 guys who do that consistently. Now you add a couple from Patrick Beverley, a couple from Kawhi. This is a team that I think can get really dangerous from downtown. And then obviously the defensive potential that's there once everybody is healthy and has played with each other. I think by the end of the year, this team is going to be the most complete just based on the roster, based on the depth that's there so far. So I've got to have the Clippers in there. And then look, the Lakers have, to me, they've proven that this is a team that will be able to compete. I still have my reservations about the depth on that roster and the amount of minutes that they're playing, quite frankly. LeBron James is playing as many minutes as he's played in his career. He's averaging, I think, around 37 per game, and he's not getting any younger. And Anthony Davis is playing a lot of minutes early this season, and a lot of their other role players are into their 30s. So how will that transpire over an 82-game season? And I know they've been very outspoken about the anti-load management stuff. Let's see how that plays out down the stretch here.
Yeah, and I think there's a lot of question marks with the Lakers. For me personally, I've said since the beginning I would take the Clippers in 6 over the Lakers, and I think they're on like a crash course collision to meet. But the only thing that scares me about the Lakers is the durability of Davis, because he hasn't really shown that he can stay durable, throughout in the playoffs. He has one playoff win, I think it was against the Blazers. I think they might have swept them, but that's the only thing that kind of concerns me with the Lakers, their depth, and I do think they're almost, could you say they're peaking at the wrong time? I don't know, but they have looked very impressive thus far. Any other thoughts on your top 3?
No, I would say I'm looking forward to Christmas Day to see Lakers-Clippers 2.0, because I think now these teams have had a little bit of time to acclimate to each other and understand how to play with one another. Paul George didn't play in that first matchup. Kyle Kuzma and Rajon Rondo didn't play for the Lakers, so I think we'll have a little bit of a better understanding of where these two teams stack up. The Lakers' size is the thing that really stands out. The fact that they can put 2-3 big men on the floor at the same time and just bully teams on the interior. But the Clippers have 4 different guys that average 19 points per game or more, which is the most in the NBA. Nobody else is even close to that. The fact that you have almost 2 dynamic duos, 2 in the starting lineup and then 2 that come off the bench, is where the Clippers seem to have the advantage almost every single night. Now, last night, for example, Lou Williams gets ejected, Patrick Beverley gets ejected, so now you're in a fourth quarter where you're missing 2 of your key energy, and those are really the 2 leaders on the team. They get ejected, and down the stretch, it wasn't there. I think that played a huge factor. But that's what I'm looking forward to, is the Christmas Day matchup, because I think it'll be a good litmus test for both teams.
We are here with Noah Eagle, the radio voice of the Los Angeles Clippers on 570 Los Angeles. Okay, last thing before we let you go, because my boss is going to say, why didn't you talk about the Timberwolves? Okay, fine, we'll talk about the Timberwolves. You saw them last week. I texted you. I gave you the scout, what were your thoughts on the Timberwolves? You know what? I'm just going to let you talk because I can go off on them, but you may have the floor here. What were your thoughts on the Timberwolves last week? And they really did. I got to give them credit. They did battle back in that game late in the fourth, but just not enough.
Yeah, I was going to say, I thought that they actually battled really well, and I think Ryan Saunders has done a good job in the culture, with changing the culture of the Timberwolves, and
Agreed.
I think they want to fight for him. I really do think the players like playing for Ryan Saunders so far. With that being said, also I will say, I know you're not a huge Wiggins guy, but this was the best I've seen him play in his NBA career. I thought he actually looked comfortable out there for the first time that I've ever seen, and we'll see if that continues. I think he had a really hot start to the season, and then he's almost regressed a little bit back towards the mean, but Karl Anthony Towns is an all-worldly talent. To me, the Timberwolves need to find the right personnel to surround Karl Anthony Towns with, and they don't have that right now. I think that Jarrett Culver has a chance to be a very, very good player in the NBA, but he needs to develop a consistent jump shot to keep the defense honest. Same thing with Josh Okogie. I love both those guys. I think that has a chance to be a really good defensive backcourt. And to me, I look at a guy like Patrick Beverley as someone they should look at the career of. Jarrett Culver and Josh Okogie have the defensive intangibles and the willpower and the energy to match what Pat Beverley has. But what Pat has learned over the years is, I need to be able to hit these open threes because they're going to come to me when now Kawhi Leonard and Paul George or Lou Williams and Montrezl Harrell are drawing the defense. I'm the guy they're going to leave open. And that is currently what's happening with Jarrett Culver and Josh Okogie on the perimeter. Those are the guys they're leaving open. I mean, Jarrett Culver, I think, is shooting around 20% from three. You'll live with that. You'll live with an open three from that guy, and more often than not in that game he was missing it. I don't think Jeff Teague fits this roster anymore, and I know this is the last year of his deal, so we'll see what happens with him, if they can maybe move him and try to accumulate some pieces. But I don't think this Wolves franchise is in the worst possible place right now. I do think that obviously they have pieces in Karl Anthony Towns. And by the way, I know Andrew Wiggins he's not become a fan favorite, I would say, over the last few years, but based on the way that he's playing this year, I think it's just getting a little more feasible to potentially trade him and move him. You might not get the same market value of what his contract is worth, but you might get something that you can use. And I'll go back to the Clippers because they've been so smart about this stuff. Like Chris Paul, they knew that he wasn't coming back a couple summers ago, so they were proactive and they decided to trade him ahead of his final year of his contract. And in doing so, they bring in Patrick Beverley, Lou Williams, and Montrezl Harrell, and those three guys attracted Kawhi Leonard and Paul George. Right. So now, in hindsight, you're like, whoa, how this was highway robbery. And they got a couple first-round picks. So that happens there. You know, they traded Blake Griffin ahead to get Tobias Harris and Boban and a couple other pieces, which then they traded those to get Landry Shamet and more assets, in which they eventually used for Paul George. So I think that Minnesota as a whole, I do think they're in a good spot, and if they can get rid of Wiggins and potentially just stockpile some assets, you never know. I just think when you have a worldly talent like Karl Anthony Towns, you just got to figure it out. You've got to surround it with the right guys.
All right, fair enough. Noah made me feel a little bit better about the Wolves, whatever. But no, I'm pretty pessimistic when it comes to them. It's just been a long time. It really has been. And I think the way that Jimmy Butler exited, Minnesotans do not like him, and I actually am a huge fan of Jimmy Butler, so there's another kind of slap in the face. I don't know. I know Karl Towns was not playing against New Orleans, but to lose to the Pelicans at home, and the Pelicans were on a pretty bad streak as well, it's just, it's tough. But I love what you said about Andrew Wiggins. I agree with you that Wiggins has played a lot better, and I do think that this is the time to do it if you're going to trade him.
Yeah, I think his value is it's increasing. With each good game that he has, his value is just getting higher and higher. You don't know if that's going to stop at some point. And to me, you you want to strike while the iron's hot, and I would say the iron is decently hot right now. It's at least warm for Andrew Wiggins, and you never know if you might end up like. Let me put it this way: Doc Rivers said that when they did make that trade with Chris Paul and bring in Montrezl Harrell as part